because we spent 12 grand, $1,000 per unit to put in dishwashers, we just made $144,000. What's up, fruitful investors? In today's video, I'm going to share with you how to renovate your multifamily buildings in order to make that big money in real estate. I'm going to share with you some insider tips from being a real estate agent that specializes solely with real estate investors, as well as I'm a real estate investor who owns more than a dozen properties. So if you're looking to make big money in multifamily real estate, it's all about getting the income up. This is your sole focus and purpose when being a multifamily owner. Unlike single family, and how you make money in the single family realm is just renovating it and attracting a new buyer. So you're playing on the emotions, the nice curb appeal, the nice flooring, etc. for a home buyer to buy you out, and that's how you make money in single family. But in multifamily, it is completely different. It is a completely different financial sandbox, and it is all about income. When you get the income up on your building, i.e. rents, the value of your building directly goes up accordingly. And I'll show you how and why in a second, but it's all about the income. So don't forget that. We want to get the rents up. So how do we do that? There are a few ways. And the easiest way is when a tenant moves out naturally, that's when you just redo the entire unit. So let's say a tenant is living in there and they're paying $600 for a 2-bedroom. The rent is totally outdated because that tenant's been there for 5, 7, 10 years, which is very common with multifamily. You always have a couple tenants that stay for way too long and the rents get way outdated. But this is the kind of properties we want to look for. We want to look for properties where we can dramatically raise the rents. So we're usually looking for shitty buildings in nice areas where the tenant quality is pretty bad, or maybe the tenants have just been there for way too long, and we know, because we're specialists, we know what the rents should be. And I'll show you why and how in a second, why that is so important to us. But when a tenant moves out naturally, that's when we go in there and we redo everything. We do the new kitchen, the new floors, the new paint colors, and all that nice fancy stuff so we can attract a higher quality tenant who's willing to pay more in rent. So I'm not going to go into huge detail on which materials you should use, because that could be an entire whole course on its own. But I will say that I have a ton of those videos on my channel on how and what materials you should use when renovating properties. And also you can just follow a lot of the flips I've done on my channel and see exactly what materials I've used. But in a nutshell, I'll give you my top tips, and that's to use bright and neutral colors. So the most popular color, or the most easy color on tenants' eyes, is a nice light neutral gray. So we all know that beige was in the early 2000s. Everything was beige. Now everything is a light mushroom gray, and that's the same color I use for all my properties. If you see my videos and my walkthroughs, every single property I own literally looks the exact same material wise. I'm using the nice gray on the walls. I'm using the same vinyl laminate that looks just like hardwood, but it is super durable, water resistant, mold resistant, perfect for rental properties, and it looks absolutely amazing. So I use that on the floors. New kitchens, I usually use IKEA kitchens, and I use the gray colored cabinets for several reasons. One, it looks modern, it's different than the typical white, but two, it's a dark color, so it holds up really well to wear and tear from tenants. So those are kind of my top tips. And I also forgot, I use high baseboards. So don't be using the little 3-inch or 4-inch baseboards. I always use a 6-inch baseboard. It takes it to a whole another level, and it's really not that much more. The material is pennies more, and the installation is the exact same. So you might as well fork out the money on the materials, and that's usually the advice I always give to all my clients and my partners. Let's spend more money on the materials, because the installation is the exact same cost, whether it's a cheap, shitty laminate or a really good quality material. So when a tenant moves out naturally, that is obviously the easiest way. But if you don't want to wait, let's say you want to plan on selling your building in the next 2 or 3 years, which is really when you should start using these strategies. When you're thinking of selling 2 or 3 years out, now's the time that you start doing these renovation strategies. So when a tenant moves out, it's super easy, but let's say they're not moving out. They've been there forever, they have no intention of leaving, but it's really hurting your bottom line and your net operating income, how much money is coming in. The next step is to pay a tenant to leave. So I usually always start at 500 bucks. Some that might not be enough. You might have to go up to 1,000, even 1,500, maybe even $2,000 to pay an old tenant to leave the building so that you can renovate the whole unit and get a new tenant in. So you're probably saying 2,000 bucks to give a tenant for no reason. That's crazy. It's way too much money. You'll see in the calculations later why $2,000, even $3,000 is nothing. It is nothing compared to how much money you can make in multifamily when you get the rents up. We'll talk about that in a second. Now the next easiest way is if a tenant won't leave and you don't want to pay them, you don't have the money, you don't have the cash to pay them, but you still want to raise that rent a little bit, the easiest way to do that is to add a dishwasher. Now who doesn't want a dishwasher in their unit? And this alone can raise the rent by 50 bucks tomorrow. So if you go to your tenant and you say, listen, Mr. Tenant, I'm gonna put in a dishwasher in this kitchen. I hope you enjoy that, but I'm gonna have to up the rent by 50 bucks. Is that okay with you? 9 times out of 10, I guarantee the tenant will say yes. Put a dishwasher in my unit and 50 bucks more a month, no problem. That's totally worth it. Now that might cost you to retrofit a dishwasher into a kitchen, take some cabinets out, hire a carpenter to do this. It might cost you about $1,000 with the dishwasher and the installation. Now just keep that in mind for later in the video, because you might be thinking 1,000 bucks for nothing, just for 50 measly bucks a month. That is not worth it, but it really is. You'll see in a second. Now the third way we can raise the value of the building, I forgot to add it here, is to renovate common areas. This is by far the writing's horrible. This is by far the easiest way to attract more high quality tenants without even touching the actual unit. When you show your property, your building to a tenant, what's the first thing they walk into? They walk into your lobby to meet you. If you don't have a lobby, you usually have stairwells or hallways to get to the units. This is by far the easiest way to make a new tenant feel like, wow, this is a nice place to live. I don't feel embarrassed coming to this building, because we've all been through multifamily buildings or apartment buildings where the hallways are nasty, the doors are all the wood, 1970s wood doors. It's just horrible. So the easiest way is to paint the entire hallway or stairwell or lobby, paint everything the nice neutral gray like I'm saying, redo the baseboards, redo the floors, put some plants in the windows, some fake plants, you don't have to water them all the time, but just make that first initial step into your building feel very inviting. This alone is going to raise the value of your building a lot, because you'll be able to charge much more rent. And this is not even touching the actual unit. You're just touching, the feeling when they walk into the unit to come home, right? Nobody wants to come home to a grungy, dirty old hallway, then to go into the dirty old unit that you haven't renovated in 20, 30 years. So the easiest way, one of the easiest ways, is to renovate the common areas. And this is the biggest mistake I see almost all multifamily sellers do. They never touch the common areas. They try and renovate the units, or maybe not at all, but they always leave the common areas alone. It's like the same thing since the 1970s. It's never been touched since then. It boggles my mind. One of the easiest ways to jack up the value and jack up the rent is that alone. Now let's go to the numbers of why and how this is so important. Why raising the rents on your properties are so important. So let's say we have a 12 unit building, right? So we got a 12 plex, and the NOI, the net operating income, is $50,000 a year. So all the incomes subtracted by all of the expenses before mortgage calculations, if you don't include that in the net operating income. So all the income minus all of the expenses, property taxes, utilities, insurance, property manager, vacancy funds, all of that subtracted by the rents leaves us with the NOI. Now, if I'm going a little too fast for you, I can't really discuss more about this. I gotta move on. But I have a ton of videos on my channel explaining what NOI is and how to calculate that, but we're gonna keep moving along here. So essentially we're left with 50 grand every year after all of the expenses before mortgages on this example 12 plex. Now a typical 12 plex in Kitchener-Waterloo has a cap rate of 5%. Now the cap rate is determined really by the area, what the quality of the area is. The lower the cap rate, the higher quality building it is. I know it's strange, but the lower the cap rate, the higher quality. The higher the cap rate usually means the shittier the building or the worse the area. And the area really dictates what the cap rate should be. Now, how do you know what cap rate should be for what area? This is all determined by working with a real estate agent who specializes with investors. The regular realtors will not know this. This is why you should never work with an average Joe realtor. All the realtors you see on the buses and the benches, don't work with them when it comes to multifamily. You're going to lose a ton of money. So the cap rate, typical cap rate in Kitchener for a decent area is 5%. A really nice area in Kitchener will be around 4.5, 4.3. But those buildings don't really make you a ton of cash flow. That's much more of a long-term, a really long-term approach. But the average building is a 5% cap rate. Now, the value of this building, if we calculate $50,000 divided by 5%, that gives us a purchase price or a value of $1 million. This building would be worth $1 million. This is how multifamily works. This is why I love it. It's just straight numbers, no pissing around. The curb appeal, the kind of laminate, the color of the walls, that really doesn't matter when determining value. That stuff matters in getting a tenant to pay more rent, which directly relates to the value. So those things are important, but they don't dictate what the value should be. The numbers do. Numbers don't lie. That's why I love it. So let's say if we raise the value of the net operating income, which is how you do that through raising the rents. Now let's say we use the example of the dishwashers. We didn't touch the units. We didn't renovate them at all. All we did was add a dishwasher, and we added $50 a month per unit, okay? So I got my numbers here so I don't mess things up. But if we add $50 a month times 12 units times 12 months, I'm gonna write that over here. Essentially, we're raising the net operating income by $7,000 or $7,500 a year, just by $50 a month per unit times 12 months. Okay, so the new net operating income would be $57,500 a year. The cap rate didn't change. Why? Because the area didn't change. The building's still in the same area. It's still a 5% cap rate. The only thing we did change was the net operating income, the money coming in. Now, this value of the building now is $1,144,000. Okay, so that's what I was saying before. Was it worth it to spend the $1,000, maybe even $1,200 to get a carpenter in to install a dishwasher? You might be thinking, I don't want to pay that. That's 12 grand for all the units. That's crazy. Well, look what just happened. Because we spent 12 grand, $1,000 per unit to put in dishwashers, we just made $144,000 by raising the rents $50 a month. Okay, was that worth it? Hell yeah, it's worth it. I would do that deal every single day. Anybody would. Now let's say we raise the value of the rents by $100 a unit. Maybe we got lucky and all the tenants moved out, or it took us a year or two to kick all the tenants out. Some moved out naturally, some we had to pay to leave. But in doing that, we renovated the units half-assed, not even that much. We just painted, maybe changed a bit of flooring, and we raised the rents by $100 more than they were, okay? So now the net operating income would be $64,400 a year. Again, cap rate didn't change. What's the building worth this time? $1,288,000. So by raising the rents on this 12-unit apartment building by $100 each unit, essentially we just made $288,000 to the value of the building. That's what, if a buyer wanted to buy that from me today, that's the price he's got to pay. I bought it at $1 million. I'm selling to him 2 years later when I turn the building around for $288,000. Okay, so that's a good profit in 2 years, maybe 1 year, depending how long it takes. Now let's say we raise the value of each unit $200. See where this is going. So now, now we really renovated the units. So we kicked the tenants out, we paid some off, we did all the new kitchens, we've just pimped it all out. Every unit is spectacular. We redid the common areas. This building looks sweet. $200 more a unit than when we bought it. Cap rate doesn't change again, we know that. Now the building is worth $1,576,000. What do we make in 2 years? Flipping this building over, getting all the tenants out, renovating? $576,000 in 1 or 2 years maybe we spent $30,000 renovating all the units, maybe 40, maybe 50,000, let's say we spent on renovating all 12 units, making them look amazing. $576,000 in a couple years. This is how multifamily works. This is how you really make the big money in real estate. You can't do these kind of strategies with single family. You have to buy a lot of properties to make that kind of money, and it's more on emotions. It's more getting the regular first-time home buyer to buy the property, to buy your single family home. This is a little different. Multifamily is all about business and numbers. This is why I really love investing in multifamily buildings. So if you like this video and you learned anything, please click like right below. And to find out more about my real estate investing apprenticeship program, about how you can partner with me one-on-one and we can buy properties maybe like this together, you can find out more about that right about here. I will see you in the next video.